This is going to be an interesting one about Jeffrey Epstein. Man, I hate this guy. I'm so sick of this son of a bitch, and he's dead. So some new emails came out. The Democrats are being blamed for the emails coming out for the leak, because apparently it was a leak. It wasn't included in all the previous documents that have already come out, which, according to the Department of Justice website, is a total of 33,000 pages from the Oversight Committee. To get to what actually happened and what you're seeing in these headlines that oftentimes are clickbait, so I completely get it if you just tuned out. But essentially, Epstein, he was already a convicted sex offender. These emails show how he talked about some pretty powerful people and trying to minimize the damage to his reputation, essentially. Ghislaine Maxwell, in the emails kind of appears to be like a confidant, and we know they were like in love or had some kind of weird relationship or something like that. Trump actually was involved with these two individuals, as it were. So the Epstein emails, he notes that, and we're going to take a look at them, but essentially he notes that one of the victims spent hours with Trump, but they black out the name. And it's weird because we come to find out the name is Virginia Giuffre, who has already come out and said all these things. So it's kind of strange that that's even like a thing. There's an instance where Epstein calls Trump borderline insane. He was actually tracking Trump. Like, how weird is that? There was some information on Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew. As we know, he's been, I don't know what they call that. In response to this, of course, as we would expect from Trump and the Trump White House, it's been complete pushback. There's just no way. He hasn't been involved with any of this, so on and so forth. This is very real, y'all. Like, this really impacts people. Lives are really destroyed when you do that to a young person. The impact that will have on their entire life is astronomical. When I cover this story, and the reason I've been dumping the Epstein story is so long is not because I have a political agenda. It's not because I care one way or another who wins the White House or the Senate seats or whatever. What I care about is these scumbags in these powerful positions thinking it gives them license to do whatever the fuck they want to do, including raping little. I don't care what your excuse is. There's no excuse. And to use your power and leverage to cover that up, it's absolutely disgusting. And we have to call it out when we see it, right? We can't be selective about it, because it's very clear there's scumbags on all sides. I think the differentiation is not so much your political affiliation, but more how much money you have in the bank account and how much you can get away with. And really how sick and twisted you are to want to manipulate children. Completely out of control. Email number 1 here. We have the actual timeline here from the House Oversight Committee. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Virginia Guffey spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Okay. So he's obviously part of an ongoing conversation. Very careful about what they're saying, what they're not saying. It's almost like a mob type conversation, right? You have to be kind of on the inside to know what the hell they're actually talking about. So that's the first email that we are subjected to. And right off the bat, they're talking about, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. So they're talking about having some type of poll over Trump and that they're 75% there. So this goes back to the theory that Maxwell might have been some kind of Mossad agent where he was collecting information, damning information on politicians and other powerful people to use as leverage against them later when needed. And we can't put it past Israel to do something like that, right? We're the most powerful nation in the world. We always have their back. But there may be instances where they want more than we want to give. Or there may be instances where we disagree. And boy, having a video of a president in a compromising position with a young person would be a very solid piece of leverage to use against that person. So here is the second email. Now, this is a direct correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. So from Jeffrey Epstein, he says, well, it's blacked out victim, but we know that is, if we're to believe what we're told, Virginia Guffey, Mar-a-Lago identifier. Trump said he asked me to resign over a member ever. Oh, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Okay. And then email 3 is direct correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. And this is the one where there's some interesting stuff in here. So this is to Epstein from Michael Wolff. I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. Now, in response, Jeffrey Epstein says, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Michael Wolff responds, I think you should let him hang himself. Now they're talking about Trump, of course. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or, if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. He's a journalist. And according to the New York Post and this email here and several other news outlets, he was urging on Jeffrey Epstein to potentially blackmail President Trump. Why is a reporter helping Jeffrey Epstein gain control over Trump? That's super weird, right? Yes, Gabe, it is. It's super fucking weird.
In a 2019 email to author Michael Wolff, Epstein writing, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member, ever. Of course, he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Now, Epstein Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. Sources say she's angling for a pardon, and when asked about it, Trump hasn't ruled it out. Now, as for that petition to force the files release, Speaker Johnson, who's gone to great lengths to avoid a vote, now says he'll bring it to the floor next week.
Right, and George, you talk about great lengths, Mary. Pretty extraordinary to have the Attorney General and the FBI Director in the White House Situation Room lobbying a member of Congress. We've never really seen anything like that before.
We certainly haven't, George. They are going to great lengths, as you said, to try and stop these full files from being released. But as we said, that effort simply didn't work here yesterday.
Mary Bruce.
I mean, there's no logical reason for wanting to stop the release of those files other than you don't want the truth out. That's all there is to it. The only reason you would not want that out is because you don't want the truth out. And I think at one point the president said something about like, well, we don't want innocent people to get hurt. Well, Mr. President, I'm sorry, but how many innocent victims were hurt in this little sex tirade these perverts decided to have? Unbelievable. I think important thing with all of this is not to lose sight of the victims. Because, well, one of them, a couple of them are now deceased. One of them in a very questionable manner. And probably the one that was a little more vocal. Virginia Giuffre was a brave, brave soul. Her family, her brother in particular, did a piece with Anderson Cooper where they talked about some of what was going on. This was a couple months ago, but I think it's very relevant to the conversation. And I think it's really important to remember, like, these are real people that had their entire life just imploded.
It is our strong belief that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein did not act alone, and the DOJ is fully aware of this fact. We call for full transparency from the administration and insist that the DOJ release all documents related to this case. After years of fighting for justice and working as an advocate for sex trafficking survivors, Virginia Giuffre died by suicide in April. Her family at the time said she was the light that lifted so many survivors. I spoke with Amanda and Sky Roberts yesterday.
You know, we're very wary that this may be just another move of the Department of Justice, right? Where they're saying they're going to do one thing, but then their actions are showing a completely different thing. And so to kind of leak these documents where people are implicated that are heavily, redacted, one time at another, that's not really full transparency.
But, let's be clear, the people that are involved in this and that are in these files are monsters, they're predators, they're people that have created sexual abuse against young women, children. And so, no, their names should not be redacted out of these files. I think it's important that they are held to the highest form of law and justice, and that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, I think that's her legacy, right? It wasn't just, the exposure, but then beyond exposure is accountability. And one of our very last conversations, she told me, like, my files are sitting at the Southern District Courts right now, waiting to be unsealed. And that was her fight. And that is the fight of all survivors, right? Let's expose these monsters.
I'm not quite sure why why we continue to negotiate with somebody who is a known perjurer, as well as someone who sex trafficked and was convicted of sex trafficking children. And so for her to be put up in what I would call it, a posh prison, a minimum security prison is an insult. And quite frankly, it absolutely shows that there's some sort of negotiation going on. I mean, let's be real, and we're not stupid, right? I mean, people are smart here. I think you can see between the lines that there's some type of negotiation going on. And so, for her to just moments after speaking to the Department of Justice to be transferred to a prison that would, again, be labeled to me as a posh prison it's an insult. And so she needs to be immediately transferred back to a maximum security prison, held to the highest standards. And I think the last part and the last point here is that, President Trump himself stated that people that have sex trafficked across borders should be held to the harshest penalties, and yet we're seeing the exact opposite right now in the sense that she's being transferred to a minimum security prison, which I'll just state as the Real Housewives prison. So it's an insult to us, it's an insult to survivors, and she should be immediately transferred back to a maximum security prison. I want to show it as a sign of strength, though, in the strength that she had and the amazing person that she was and still is. She fought for so many survivors out there, and I think if she were with us today, I mean, she'd be screaming, Anderson. She'd be screaming from a mountaintop, and yeah, we're still dealing with grief. I think that's important to know, is that this just happened in April. Okay, we're not far removed, and immediately, obvious, there's this spotlight on the current situation, which really, to me, feels like an injustice, because all we're asking these people to do is the right thing. And that's all that she ever asked for, was just to do the right thing, because we're asking for one simple thing, which is accountability. I think the survivors deserve that. My sister deserved that, and she'd be screaming that from a mountaintop right now.
I think everyone sees her as like this strong, fierce lion, and she was that, and she was formidable, and she fought every day of her life to survive everything that she had gone through and that she was still going through. But man, she was joy. She was someone that could come into the room and just light it up and instantly give you strength and power and love, and her capacity for love was just outstanding after everything that she had gone through in her life.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't take that away from her.
No.
No. She was still ready to fight this fight. She was proud of what she did with her survivor sisters. She was ready to keep the battle going if she needed to. She still has battles going on, as Amanda mentioned, in the Southern District courts to release her own files. And I think at the end of the day, what my sister wanted, and what I believe a lot of, survivors would perceive as justice here, would be that, we're looking for accountability. Like, it's far removed, Anderson, to say that these people acted alone, right? Epstein and Maxwell did not act alone, whether it was rich and powerful men, whether it was banks or lawyers or doctors, it doesn't matter, right? Like, these people deserve to be held accountable. And, it's a known fact now, and it's publicly known that JP Morgan Chase did a multi-million-dollar settlement with survivors because of, potential red flags that they might have missed. And so I think that's what we're asking for, is that anybody that's involved in this to be fully held accountable.
Accountability, y'all. I mean, at the end of the day, if all these people walk that haven't been suicided, we lose big time. So this was a story that came out, and basically Epstein was following Trump. Yeah, he was like stalking him, apparently. Well, maybe not stalking, but he was like having him followed and keeping tabs on him. Epstein kept close eye on Trump even after friendship soured. Newly released emails reveal documents show staff kept Epstein informed of Trump's air travel, and Epstein kept up with news about former friend. Revealed that Epstein's staff kept him appraised of Donald Trump's air travel as it related to his own transportation, and that the late sex trafficker kept up with news about his former friend years after the relationship soured. The people that were impacted the most, that were hurt the most, that had to go through the most, are the ones that receive the least out of everything. The news corporations are going to make a ton off of this. Somehow these powerful guys that are good will spin a way to make this a good thing, and it won't impact them. But the actual victims, they're fucked. I mean, they're beyond fucked, because would you be able to wage a war against the president of the United States, a legal war? I seriously doubt it.
It's mind-boggling to me, the amount of effort that's going into like not covering this topic. I mean, as you mentioned, there are victims here. So, I mean, to me, I prioritize justice for the victims, regardless of political party. And from what it sounds like in the emails that are going around, I mean, at the very least, it sounds like Epstein felt that he had some stuff on Trump. It sounds like that, you know, there's a reason for Trump to call it a hoax then.
Absolutely. There's a reason for him to bury it, because he's clearly implicated. I mean, and that's why this was leaked. I don't even think this was legally acquired. Like someone leaked this to the press.
It's still, unfortunately, like there's not that much meat there, which makes me think this is why it was a tolerated leak, that we can all still bicker about the value thereof, that there's not much technically to chew on. So it fuels the fire of Trump saying, it's just a hoax. It's a hoax. You know, there's not much there. And, you know, but it's also true, like you said earlier, that, you know, that if the Biden administration was big into protecting the victims, they could have covered this during their administration. So
absolutely,
in my brain, this just sounds to me like wealthy elite scumbags that are still technically colluding to hide the truth from we the people, to not get justice for the victims, while they utilize this information and the desire for everybody to know the truth to simply dangle that carrot once again, that nobody can reach.
Virginia Giuffre, she was the victim that recently passed under some interesting set of circumstances. But this, she had a book going, and an author completed it posthumously that was working with her, and they did a short interview here on PBS. So I was going to play a chunk of that here. This is, I'm probably going to mess up the pronunciation, Amna Nawaz. She authored Giuffre's posthumous memoir. Something I did not know about Virginia Giuffre is that she was victimized at a very early age from friends and family members, including her own father.
And you're right. Like there are evil people that know these formulas, and apply them. You know, good people are good people, and I observe that bad people organize faster than good people.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works.
Yeah, and have systems of knowledge that they share through, you know, eons, since time immemorial. The the bad people have been colluding and conspiring for so long, and the good people aren't paying attention and suffer under these conspiracies and these formulas of compromising people.
And what's interesting in this, like I was saying, was the degree to which she dealt with this her entire life, from her own family members, and then how that connected her to these jerks down the road.
It's not how Jeffrey died, but it's how he lived. And we need to get to the bottom of everybody who was involved with that, starting with Epstein Maxwell and going along the lines there. I was recruited at a very young age from Monologue and entrapped in a world that I didn't understand, and I've been fighting that very world to this day, and I won't stop fighting. I will never be silenced until these people are brought to justice.
Weirder was the picture she posted like a couple days before she supposedly committed suicide, where she looked all beat up in a hospital room. So she posts a picture where she looks all beat up in a hospital room, and then 2 days later, she's committed suicide.
What's wrong with that, Gabe?
Everything. Everything's wrong with that.
Unflinching and haunting account of what she lived through, especially her years as a child. I think detailing all of the sexual abuse she went through at the hands of her own father, being trafficked to her father's friend, which she details, being raped by 2 teenagers later, by strangers after she runs away, first from her own home and then from an abusive group home, all before she was even 16 years old. What was it like for her to relive all of those moments and retell them to you?
Well, it was obviously very difficult. There was a decision she had to make. In the past, she had always said, truthfully, I was abused in my childhood by a family friend. That was true, and that person is in the book. But what she hadn't said was she was also abused by her own father, and that was a decision that she made to decide to go there, sort of the...
Are you familiar with Kathy O'Brien, Gabe? Kathy O'Brien wrote a book called Trance, Trance, Formation of America, and she was part of the MK Ultra program, and she went to the government and sued because of all of the debacle that occurred to her as a child. And very interestingly, she was actually cut a check for damages because of what she testified to, and government officials being involved in her abuse as a child. But if I remember her story correctly, what wound up occurring was her father was a pedophile, and he got busted. Right, that there's the police force, so to say, got a hold of him because he was a pedo. But what they offered to him wasn't arresting him. They basically said, like, hey, here's the deal. We're gonna work out a bargain with you. Either you get charged for the crimes that we can convict you on, or your daughter gets put in the program where she gets passed around.
Shut the fuck up.
Correct. So this Gabe, is how it works, right? Like these supposedly good organizations that, like, we're out there to find the bad guys. They're not out there to find the bad guys to provide justice. They're out there to find the bad guys to compromise them and then take their resources and make them assets.
I'd like to thank you for coming out here this evening to arm yourselves with comprehensive understanding of mind control, because knowledge is our only defense against mind control. Knowledge is our only defense against it, which is exactly why it's being suppressed under the 1947 National Security Act. There's a small handful of criminals that are in control of our government and in control of our country, that are in control of our information, and they're suppressing pertinent facts such as mind control and hiding under the National Security Act. That's national security that's threatening the security of our nation when it allows for crimes against humanity like tortures to continue, when it allows for mass mind control mechanisms to go into place through social engineering that keeps us all warring with each other and not really understanding exactly what it is that's going on in our world.
So they can scare the shit out of you to control you, or
Yes.
they can just blast your mind to control you.
There's many ways to accomplish the goal. Kathy is unfortunately all too experienced in many of the capacities. She is a champion of the truth, a hero in my mind's eye for the children that are still suffering in these programs. So
Yeah, I know
I'll do my best to speak on. Say this again.
I was just saying, I know that's been a big thing for you, is like the CIA still involving children in these.
They're still totally doing this. Yep.
Look at this, what Psionic says here. Amazon's biggest profits come from running servers for the CIA. Facts. Wow. Imagine that if CIA has a backdoor to all these companies that use AWS. I mean, there's so many of them. We saw what happened when those servers had issues. Like 80% of the web was. I think server farms and metadata collection has been going on well before we, the people, knew the technology existed.
Victims of sexual trafficking are not born, they are made, and they are made through terrible experience. And so she would say to me, how can I go after or try to point the finger at all of these men I've been trafficked to, bold-faced names, when I won't even talk about the person who originally hurt me and who arguably made her more vulnerable to being hurt throughout her life because she had had these early experiences.